On a cold December evening, the streets of Chicago buzzed with holiday lights and busy footsteps. People hurried past the vendors on the sidewalks, their arms full of shopping bags. The smell of roasted chestnuts lingered in the air, blending with the faint sound of Christmas carols echoing from a nearby church. At the corner of a street, where the wind bit the hardest and the lamppost flickered weakly, stood a little girl no more than 9. Her shoes were worn, her coat too thin, but her eyes sparkled with something rare. Hope. In her tiny hands, she held a cardboard sign that read in bold letters, "Miracles far one dice." Most people walked by with a dismissive glance, assuming it was another beggar's trick. Some shook their heads, others tightened their grip on their wallets. Yet the girl stood tall for her size, calling softly to the crowd, $1 for a miracle, please. Just $1. Across the street, leaning against a sleek black limousine, stood Richard Thornton, one of the wealthiest men in the city. A self-made millionaire, known for his iron fist in business and his cold laughter in the face of sentimentality. He was waiting for his driver to return from the coffee shop, when his gaze fell on the girl. A smirk tugged at his lips. Miracles for $1. The absurdity of it amused him. He adjusted his cashmere scarf and, out of sheer boredom, decided to cross the street. "Miracles, huh?" he said, towering over the child. His voice dripped with mockery. "And what kind of miracle can you give me for $1?" The girl looked up, her eyes shining with innocence. "The kind you need, sir. God still does miracles, but sometimes he asks us to believe first." Richard chuckled, pulling out a crisp $1 bill. To him, it was worth less than the paper it was printed on. "All right, little preacher. Here's my $1. Let's see what miracle you've got for me." He slapped the bill into her hand and turned, already amused at the story he would tell at dinner. But the girl didn't pocket the money. She held it gently, then closed her eyes. For a moment, her lips moved in a whisper, though Richard couldn't hear the words. She then looked up at him and said softly, "Your miracle will find you. Soon." Richard laughed loudly, shaking his head. Adorable. Absolutely adorable. And with that, he stepped into his limousine, leaving the girl in the cold. That night, Richard attended a lavish party at a grand hotel. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, champagne flowed endlessly, and laughter echoed in the hall. He told the story of the little girl selling miracles for $1, drawing roars of laughter from his wealthy friends. But as the evening dragged on, Richard's chest tightened. He excused himself, brushing it off as indigestion, but the pain worsened until he collapsed right there on the marble floor. The party stopped instantly. Panic filled the room. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital. Hours later, Richard opened his eyes to the steady beeping of a heart monitor. A doctor stood at his bedside, his expression serious. "Mr. Thornton," the doctor said, "you suffered a severe heart attack. If you hadn't gotten here when you did, you wouldn't have survived. It's a miracle you're alive." The word struck him like a bell. Miracle. Richard lay there in silence, recalling the little girl's face, her calm assurance. "Your miracle will find you. Soon." Days later, as Richard recovered, he couldn't shake the memory. He asked his driver to find that corner again. And there she was, the same girl, her cheeks red from the wind, holding her cardboard sign. This time, Richard approached differently. Not with mockery, but curiosity. "Little girl," he said softly, "last time I gave you $1. You said my miracle would find me, and it did." As she smiled gently, as though she had known all along. "God heard, sir. He always hears." Richard swallowed hard, something shifting inside him. "What are you doing out here? Why are you selling miracles?" Her eyes grew sad, but her voice remained steady. "My little brother is sick. Mama says the doctors need money. I don't have much, but I thought maybe if I believed, others would too. And maybe miracles cost just $1 of faith." Richard's throat tightened. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar: shame. Here he was, a man with more money than he could spend in a lifetime, mocking a child who was fighting to save her brother. He pulled out his wallet, but when he saw the bills, handing her money felt too small, too empty. Instead, he knelt down eye level with her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Naomi?" she whispered. "Well, Naomi," Richard said, his voice trembling, "today, I'm not here to buy a miracle. I'm here to give one." Within a week, Richard had arranged for Naomi's brother, Elijah, to be admitted into one of the best hospitals in the city. Doctors who once said there was no hope now fought for the boy's life with everything they had. Richard paid every bill, every treatment, every test without hesitation. Naomi visited Elijah every day, holding his hand, whispering prayers. Richard visited too, though quietly, staying in the background. Something about the little girl's faith stirred him, breaking down walls he didn't know he had built. Weeks later, on a snowy morning, Richard entered Elijah's hospital room and saw the boy sitting up for the first time, color returning to his cheeks. Naomi looked at Richard with tears in her eyes. "The doctors said he's getting better. They said it's a miracle." Richard felt his heart swell. Not the sharp pain from before, but a warmth so deep it startled him. He realized in that moment that miracles weren't always flashes of divine light or impossible wonders. Sometimes they were the kindness of strangers, the courage of children, and the willingness to believe when no one else would. Naomi hugged him tightly, whispering, "Thank you for being our miracle." And, for the first time in years, Richard Thornton, the cold-hearted millionaire, felt something break free inside him. Something softer, gentler, alive. He held the little girl close, realizing that in giving her family a miracle, he had found his own.